Hello, everybody. Trying something a little bit different today, just to give you some time to maybe watch this at your own pace and then possibly get to work on your activities. So today we are reviewing our Unit 3. We're actually going to cut this up into two different units. We're going to cut it up into our political revolutions, like our French and our Latin American, and then we're going to also cut it up into our Industrial Revolution for tomorrow. The essential questions we're going to focus on today for our little mini review is we're going to look at the influential causes, events, and effects of the French Revolution, which I remember you guys liking, so hopefully this will be pretty easy for you. What impact Napoleon had on France and Europe, what caused the Latin American revolutions, and then what were the causes and outcomes of the Haitian, Mexican, and South American revolutions. We're going to try and hit all four of those for your little review this morning, and then once you finish this, you can go ahead and get working on your activities for today. So first EQ that we're looking at is the influential causes, events, and effects of the French Revolution. So just as an overview, okay, these are what we are looking at. Remember, the causes of the French Revolution, this is going to be happening in the late 1700s. We've already gone through the Enlightenment. We've had the Renaissance. We've had those four philosophers talking to everybody about limiting governments and making sure that the kings and queens of Europe are listening to the people and not just doing whatever they feel like. So we definitely are going to see the Enlightenment as one of the causes. Okay? Those ideas of social contract theory, majority rules, freedom of speech and religion, as well as a couple other events, specifically the American Revolution. Remember, the Americans were able to defeat their overbearing king, who was unlimited in England. So if the American colonists can do it, hey, maybe the French people can do it too. We also had a lot of social inequality in France around the end of the 1700s. You had the three estates, which we'll look at in a little bit more detail here in a second. And of course, the first two estates had a lot more money, a lot more land than the third estate, and a whole lot more power in government. So that's going to be a big issue as well. Now, all of this is going to lead up to our main events. The Tennis Court Oath, where they attempted to have a constitution, which was then rejected by the first, second, and king. Storming the Bastille, where they stormed the royal prison and got all of the ammunition and weapons that were there. And then, of course, the Reign of Terror, which you guys probably remember as when they killed a whole bunch of people they thought were against their revolution using the guillotine. They chopped everybody's head off. Then, of course, at the end of the French Revolution, we see a lot of long-lasting effects. The monarchy was gone from England. Of course, King Louis and Queen Marie Antoinette were gone. Enlightenment ideas are going to spread throughout Europe, also because Napoleon will take over most of Europe and spread those ideas. And then the governments around Europe became a whole lot nicer to their people. They obviously did not want to get their heads chopped off like King Louis did, so maybe we should give our people some more freedom, maybe lower their taxes a little bit, make things a whole lot nicer in general for our citizens. So moving on from there, please remember the three estates. Okay? The three estates, you had the first estate was the clergy, or members of the church. They owned about, I think it was 15% of the land, didn't pay any taxes, had a lot of money. The second estate was nobility. Okay, there's our lords and ladies, people that were related to the king somehow. They owned about 25% of the land, had a whole lot of money, didn't pay any taxes. And then, of course, this revolution is going to be led by the third estate, which is everybody else. This was probably 97% of the people in France at the time, paid all the taxes, only owned about 40% of the land, which sounds like a lot, but really, when it's 27 million people, that's not that much at all. And so obviously they're going to be very upset at their situation. And then don't forget, each estate only had one vote. So if the third estate is trying to make their position better in France, they're continuously going to be outvoted by the first and second estates, who obviously don't want to change anything because they have a pretty sweet deal. So they're always going to get outvoted. And even though one vote sounds equal, it's not very fair. Okay? So there's our big problems leading into the French Revolution. So what does the third estate do? They want a constitution. So they meet at Tennis Court Oath, which is actually a tennis court. Pause. They meet on a tennis court. They tell everybody, we want a constitution. We're not leaving till we get one. You have to give us a constitution. And it looks kind of like that picture. A bunch of guys hang out on tennis court yelling about what rights and freedoms they wanted from the king and the government. Okay. Unfortunately, though, the king refuses. The king says, no, I like what we have. You have to give me money, and this is just the way it's going to be. So then the peasants got involved. Peasants decided, well, diplomacy is not working. We're going to go ahead and start rioting. So they ride across the countryside. They storm the royal prison, which is the Bastille. They kill the governor of the Bastille. If you guys remember, he died a pretty horrible death. And they take all the ammunition and guns from the Bastille. Now, if you see in this picture, remember, it was so easy for them because the soldiers joined them. Remember, the soldiers are a part of the Third Estate just like everybody else. So the soldiers joined them in the rioting, and they were able to take over the government. They captured the king and the queen. And this is where things get really bloody. Okay, this is where we see Maximilien Robespierre, who was the dictator of France at the time. He led the revolutionaries. He starts calling for the execution of anybody who was against the revolution. So you guys can see up on the screen there, you've got people being beheaded left and right, starting with the king and the queen, killed 100,000 in about 9 to 10 months, until eventually people realized that he was insane and they ended up chopping his head off. Okay. So that ends the French Revolution, ends the bloodshed. But then what? Okay, who are we left with? Of course, that's going to be my favorite, Napoleon. So really quickly, I want to talk about Napoleon and the impact he had. Mostly look at his positives and his negatives. Remember, Napoleon was just this small statured guy from Corsica. He was actually Italian, but went to a French military school. And during the French Revolution, helped defend France from outside invaders like Prussia and the Russians. So he helped defend France and got a name for himself, got a good reputation, was very popular. So at the end of the French Revolution, he came in and kind of ended the bloodshed, remember, with a whiff of grape shot, and became very popular. So he was put into power in the government. While he was in power, he made himself emperor, okay, which the French people liked because, hey, he was doing some good things for their country. For instance, he allowed religious freedom. Okay, he restored the Catholic Church, allowed people to be religious or not religious if they wanted to. He also expanded France during this time period with the Napoleonic Wars. He established new tax codes as well as a new law code, the Napoleonic Code, kind of created a more stable government and society in France. So he did a lot of good things that the French people loved. Okay? But he also did some bad things. He was kind of a megalomaniac. He was pretty full of himself, kind of big for his britches, crowned himself emperor, gave himself complete power. So even after, a bloody revolution to get rid of unlimited governments, he kind of himself was unlimited. He wasn't very equal, especially with minorities and with women. Used secret police to enforce his policies. And of course, the Napoleonic Wars didn't end up well for him. He lost very badly to Russia in the invasion. He lost almost 500,000 troops. Those are people's brothers, sons, fathers. They're not going to take very kindly to the fact that they're all dying in Russia. Okay. And he also eventually is going to be defeated by the British, which then he will be exiled twice. Once to Elba, and then he'll come back to lose at the Battle of Waterloo, and then he'll be exiled to St. Helena, where he'll die of stomach cancer. So all in all, he did some good things, did some bad things. He was instrumental in spreading the Enlightenment movement, but eventually did kind of lead to his downfall. All right. Taking a little change of pace here, we're going to move over to the New World. Okay, we're going to look at the causes of the Latin American revolutions. You guys remember most of those are going to be similar to the French. They're going to be inspired by the Enlightenment ideas. They're going to be inspired by the American Revolution and the French Revolution, because now those have both happened. And we're going to have some social inequality as well. Now, we don't have estates in Latin America. Remember, it's mostly based on where you were born. So you guys have seen this triangle before. Remember, if you were a peninsulari, meaning you were born on the Iberian Peninsula, either in Portugal or Spain, that meant you had all of the power. You controlled the land, you controlled the government in Latin America, and this is the Bahamas, Central, and South America. Below them are going to be the Creoles. They were 100% European, but they were born in America. just because they're born in America meant they couldn't be in the government. They could run things in the military. They were still fairly wealthy, but they could not make decisions in government. Then we had the mestizos and the mulattoes. They were Europeans mixed with either Native American or African descent. They tended to have a little bit more legal rights than, say, natives or slaves. And of course, below, we have Africans and Native Americans. Okay, so they're obviously going to be on the lower end of the rights, wealth, land ownership, etc. So there's our social inequality in Latin America. Now, looking at each of the revolutions in particular, we're going to do these very quickly. We're going to start with our Haitian Revolution. Remember, Haiti is a teeny tiny island, actually half of a teeny tiny island off the coast of Florida and Cuba. Haiti was actually a French plantation colony, so very brutal conditions, very hot, sweltering. Most slaves only lasted about 7 to 9 months on the island of Haiti. Some, if you were lucky, might last 3 or 4 years. So the French had plantations here. They're making money hand over foot in Haiti. And of course, the slaves and even some of the mestizos and mulattoes are being mistreated. So they decide to, in 1801, rise up and overthrow the French owners of the plantations. This was fairly easy for them considering the slaves made up 90% of the population in Haiti. Okay, so it was pretty outnumbered for the French overseers. They were led by Toussaint Louverture. Unfortunately, he would be captured and imprisoned in France where he'll die. But Haiti ends up being, as you guys will see, the first successful slave revolt in history. They were the first to win a successful revolution against a European empire, the first post-colonial Black-led nation in the world. Slavery obviously was abolished, and it turns out fairly well for the Haitians at the time. So there's the Haitian Revolution. Again, very important, first successful slave revolt, first Black-led nation in the world. Okay. Then we have the Mexican Revolution. Okay. In Mexico, they were being controlled by the Spanish. Spanish Peninsulares controlled most of the land in Mexico, were mistreating the mestizos as well as the natives. Even the Creoles will eventually get in on these revolutions. But in 1811, we have Father Miguel Hidalgo there at the bottom. He's going to lead the mestizos against the Spanish in one of the first attempts at the revolution. Unfortunately, it will be unsuccessful, and him and his father, his fellow father, Jose Maria Morales, will be killed in the first fighting. But eventually, the Creoles will decide that they want to get rid of the Peninsulares and the Spanish influence as well. So they will join the fight, add their money and weapons, and they will eventually be successful in about 1824. So although Father Miguel didn't live to see the end and the freedom of the mestizos and the Mexican people, it will be successful by about 1824. Okay. And then very similar to that, we have the South American revolutions. South America, this is mostly going to be northern South America, the Spanish colonies of Venezuela, Chile, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador. They're going to start fighting back against the Spanish about the same time as Mexico, about 1811. And this kind of coincides with Napoleon fighting with the Spanish and the Portuguese, so it worked well for them. Napoleon was busy keeping the Spanish busy, so the Spanish colonies could fight back. They're going to be led by mostly Creoles and mestizos. Simón Bolívar, a native of Venezuela who had been educated in Europe, is going to come back to Venezuela to help lead the Creoles against the Spanish people. He will team up with a man named José de San Martin, who is Chilean, and free the northern colonies all the way down to Chile and Peru. And if you guys remember, he'll actually try and get a united country called Gran Colombia going, but there's too much infighting, too many differences, which will ultimately fail. But Simón Bolívar is known as the hero of the South American revolutions, and he'll even have a country named after him in Bolivia. Okay, so we went through those really quickly. There's Jose, if you want to see him. We went through those very quickly, but that basically is our political revolutions in a nutshell. So listen to it, use this for your midterm if you need to, use it for your midterm study guide if you need to. Hopefully it helps give you a little bit better understanding, again, of our revolutions. So thank you all.